What's up, guys? Welcome to a new Collection Compass video. Today, I'm going to be interviewing two very special guests, Nemu and Quazza, the team behind Kineko Video. Kineko Video is a film restoration team that focuses on anime, and since we love collecting anime and films on this channel, I figured I'd ask them all about the restoration process and why it makes all of these films and anime look so good. So, let's get right into it.
Sure. Hi, I'm Nemu. I am one of the main members of the group, and yeah, I'm glad to be here. Nice to meet you, George.
Nice to meet you.
And I'm Quazza. I'm also one of the main members. Both Nemu and I coordinate projects, do some of the restoration works. There's others, but yeah, nice to meet you, George.
It's great to meet both of you guys. Let's get right into it. What got you guys into... Well, first, what got you guys into anime? And second, what got you guys into restoration?
Dragon Ball. Honestly, as stereotypical.
We're getting right into it. Perfect.
Yeah, as stereotypical and silly as it sounds, Dragon Ball. I mean, it was on TV. It was cool. I was a kid, and it was bunch of people fighting on screen, and it was just great. Yeah.
For me, it was Naruto, actually. Same deal. It was on Toonami. I liked it a lot. I never really cared for Dragon Ball until I was like 10 years old. And that was around the time they started putting all that stuff out on DVD, so it was like a good time for me because I could just collect it all.
Yeah, before brick DVDs look so beautiful.
Oh, definitely. Actually, I became a fan around the time the Dragon Boxes were being released in the US, so it was like prime good time to be a fan. So because you got the least bad release.
That means that you got the Dragon Boxes at like retail price?
Yeah, I have them all sitting on my shelf.
Same.
You guys are so lucky. Oh my god, how much is that going for nowadays?
I don't know, but like years ago, even the second box was like running 2,000 plus or something like that, something crazy.
I bought the second box on a whim too, because I wasn't actually committed to buying them originally, and I went to a convention. And you look back now, I think the second box in particular might sell for like $1,000 sometimes, and it's just I don't really think you should be spending that kind of money on a TV show.
Yeah, no, and
I genuinely thought about it though. Just
Did you?
because at the Collection Compass, we buy DVDs, we buy Blu-rays and all that stuff. We review them here. And for a hot second, I genuinely thought about it. And then I was just like, this is not worth it.
Yeah.
It's actually cheaper to buy the Japanese ones now than the American ones.
Interesting.
As for your second part of your question, getting into restoration, that's kind of tough. Yeah.
I mean, Quazza, you were an A&B guy
anime.
before.
Yeah, that was kind of the start of it. I got into that, and then I was just always displeased with back then. Just kind of learning that stuff on your own, just editing or anything. It's just you pal around with a lot of people, and they all have different opinions on what to do. And one of the things that really drove me nuts is people would set their timeline frame rates wrong, or whatever else. And I just started digging into whatever resources I could find to figure out what the proper way to do things was. And then when I started looking at DVDs, I realized that all the releases were just kind of garbage looking. So I tried to figure out how to fix those. And then you get into different editing software or scripting software like AVI Synth or whatever else. It just kind of snowballed from there. And I love doing it. So I just kept pursuing it.
Yeah.
Would you say that your love for anime led into getting into restoration?
I would say so, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
For me, it was more a general like film thing. I think ever since I was like a kid, my hobby was to like make dumb videos and stuff with my friends. And at one point, I was like, it'd be cool, do this for real. But I mean, kind of took a turn to somewhere I wasn't expecting. I never thought we would be like restoring films and stuff like that, So I guess it's part of it, but
you guys are good at it. So keep at it.
Thank you.
That's fascinating, though. I definitely one of the big inspirations for this channel was trying to look for the best version of some of your favorite media. For plenty of movies, you could just get the 4K Blu-ray, and that's pretty much the best picture quality you're going to get. But every once in a while, you're going to get a series like Dragon Ball, where it's going to be really tough to find something with the best picture quality. And unfortunately, even for a series like that, you're not gonna the best that's possible out there. So it's definitely fascinating. I thought this would be a perfect subject for this channel.
Cool.
How'd you
Let's talk
guys
about it.
meet each other? Through the community online?
Well, it all goes kind of back to the origin of the group itself. Me and Quazza kind of knew each other before then, but not really until we kind of until it was like formed. And I coerced him into being, in into getting all the equipment and stuff. And like honestly, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Just kind of snowballed?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. Quickly, it just we kind of saw an opportunity where it's just like, oh, we could do cool stuff. Like we we don't need to necessarily wait on a company to give us a proper remaster of something. Like if we just want to kind of do it on our own for our own purposes, like why not just do it?
Yeah, the only thing is, the money, and because it's not cheap or anything.
Yeah, it does it does end up being costly. We we have had many generous people help us to fund these things, and they continue to do so. There's also a bit of an ethical quandary there too, because we're not really trying to screw anybody over. Like there's a lot of copyright stuff, a lot of licensing stuff that goes into all this, and we're not out
Ask
here
about
trying to
so
just
where does this lie legally?
we. That's a great question,
You
and
know,
it's
the
yeah. Go ahead.
majority of the things we've been putting out are either not licensed by anyone in the US, or it's questionable as to whether they can be. So far anyway. So I feel like we've been, kind of watching it, and like, you know, um, you get what I mean, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, because
you're
at the end of the
tiptoeing
day,
up and you're making sure that like you're not upsetting anybody legally.
Yeah, I mean, when we
right.
started, we actually got into talks with Discotech because we had a film that they had, and they saw us post like a thing about it, and they're like, "Hey, can you like not?" And we were
And we
like,
didn't.
"Yeah, okay, fair."
Yeah, because we're
But
not
that's
trying to screw
interesting
anybody
because
over.
now
It's
you have a
just
contact at Discotech.
What's up? I'm sorry.
See, now that's interesting though, because now you have a contact at Discotech, technically.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah,
So
so
that kind of leads into the whole professional aspect of it. Do you guys see yourselves going more working with studios to get their work out?
we would love to, honestly. But there's a there's a little complication with it because a lot of studios, if you have a history with piracy, they won't ever work with you at all. So, I don't know. I mean, we'd have to figure out how to how to get attention through more legal means than what we're doing with anime. You can probably go the home movie route or the public domain route, which we haven't really explored that much yet, but maybe in the future we'll consider it.
Okay.
yeah. If you're listening, and you want our help, we'll help. But yeah, we haven't done a lot in that space. We're more just focused on taking the things that we believe have basically no chance of ever being released in an official medium, and doing our best to bring it to you.
That's great. The work you guys do is amazing. So I could definitely see you guys getting more work in the future. You're definitely at like the cusp of professional work.
I would
Um,
agree. I like to say we're professional yet unofficial.
there you go. Um, for the collectors out there who don't know much about restoration, what does the process usually look like?
Uh, well, I want to touch on restoration first. There's a lot in that word. Um, if you're a film collector, restoration could be the physical restoration or preservation of the material. Um, it could be repairing it or preserving it. For us, what we're doing is we're digitally preserving it. So that is different, and I think that distinction should be made. But for us, it really is, we get
Do
the
you guys
materials.
work on restoring the physical film, or do you do everything digital?
Um, we know some people who can repair film, but Nemu and I don't really do too much on the physical side. Um, I know how to handle film, but I don't personally have any fancy restoration equipment to work with. Um, but the general process is that we get the materials from however we get them. We send them off to be scanned, and then we'll get those digital files back. And from there, we figure out, is it damaged? Can we patch scenes up? Is there dirt? Can we remove it? Uh, is there any references we can use for color? What are the other sources we have available to us? With Mario, which we put out recently, we had really nice audio out of the VHS capture, but the film print itself didn't have very good audio. So we look for those types of things to kind of bring the best of every aspect that we can together. And that does take a lot of time, but it also takes a number of different people coordinating to get that done.
Right, and it goes against the bound of doing official work because a lot of the time you're going to be limited by what the licensor wants you to do or the materials they give you and what they want you to use. A lot of the time you're not allowed to use things that aren't approved by them, so we have, like, doing it this way, we kind of have the the freedom to pick and choose what we want to use for what purpose. So I feel like that's an advantage we have at the at the expense of not doing it legally.
So, are you guys implying that Nintendo's not okay with the restoration?
I feel like they have no say in the matter because I don't think they own the film, actually.
They haven't
Really?
told us either way.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with that movie specifically is that it was produced by two companies called Grouper and Circus Productions, respectively, right? Both of those companies went under in the mid 90s and they don't exist anymore. Nintendo actually didn't have anything to do with the production of the movie other than licensing out their characters, so that's all they have to claim, I guess. So I don't think they have enough of a ownership claim to do anything about it. And, um, of course, a film restoration is going to get more attention than a VHS capture, but either way, there are countless uploads of the movie online, and they have millions and millions of views. So, and they never did anything about it. So, I'm pretty sure we're safe in that regard.
So, you guys know your stuff then. In
We look into these things.
That's great. That's amazing. Let me ask. Where do you guys usually find the films? Because I feel like 8mm, 16, 35mm film is kind of hard to come by. Where
Especially
do you
for
guys
anime,
get
yeah.
sources?
Okay, well, for the majority of the things we find, it's always through online auctions, and we just buy it ourselves. It can get pretty pricey, so that's where all the support we get comes in. We have a lot of members who will help us financially, and a lot of other supporters on Patreon or Ko-fi or whatever. And yeah, that's how we get most of our stuff. But in some cases, there are also collectors out there who approach us with their stuff, and they're like, "Oh, we want to get this scanned, or we want to get this preserved, or we want to put this out." And so we gladly send their materials over to get transferred as well.
You guys own the equipment that you use to scan?
Low end scanner that I bought when I was trying to learn how all of it worked.
Okay.
Though it's not really what we use anymore. We outsource it to a company, which I think it's better off. I don't go just advertising it, but
Yeah.
they help, and they're confidential about it. It's not their business what we do with it. So
Right. Right. Yeah, they have no responsibility over what we do with their scans legally, so
I'm just imagining
scanning company or whatever it would be called. Like they usually like restore like old VH, they like scan old VHS tapes or something. They restore like old weddings or something like that, and then like suddenly they just get like some random anime from the 80s.
Yeah, I
That
can
sounds like that.
imagine.
Yeah, it's certainly out of the ordinary. I'm sure there aren't a lot of companies who see that type of stuff.
I know.
I honestly, before we started doing this, we also couldn't really imagine it.
Yeah.
I know that like for the longest time, a bunch of episodes of Doctor Who, a bunch of the early episodes were considered to be lost because back then the studio literally just wiped all of their prints to use again, and they were just gone. But for some reason, some guy in Brazil owned an entire warehouse filled with them. It was just like, why?
You lose track of it. I mean, wasn't there a recent there was a recent thing with Discotech, since we've already talked about them, where they found film for Aiko,
Right.
and I mean everyone thought that was lost for the longest time, and it was just sitting on a shelf or something, and no one inventoried it. So I guess it's not always negligence. It's just uh,
It's
lost to time kind of thing.
organizational.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and we've also found some actual film negatives from anime before, which is kind of telling how these things can just get lost in the shuffle of things. Yeah, so a lot of those OVAs made in the 90s, they were edited on video, so they would have the film separately stored. And the fact that we would find these things for sale online on occasion is like, oh crap, well, that's lost to them, I guess. They can't really do anything with the film anymore because who knows what other things could be hiding in random places.
Wow, getting original film negatives, that's fascinating. Could you explain to the viewers what like original film negatives are?
So
So, oh, do you want to go?
no, I think you like these explanations more than me.
Okay.
So go for it.
So basically, if we're talking about animation, right? Let's just stick to animation. How the process works is that they do their layouts and animation on paper, and then they trace that animation on what is called celluloid or cells, where they ink and paint the paper animation onto these transparent sheets. And those transparent sheets, they have the background, the characters, and the assets that move and all that, and they're all layered together. So imagine like Photoshop, you have layers, right? It's the same idea where they layer everything together and then they, press it down, and right above it is a film camera, and this camera shoots in one frame at a time. So you press a button and it shoots one frame of film. And that's how animation used to work, where you had all these cells, and you would basically every time you take a picture, that's one frame of the movie or animation that you're making. And the very first thing that they make, like the first print or whatever, it's not print is not really the right term, but the first roll of film that they develop from the camera is called the original camera negative, right? Or OCN as we like to abbreviate it, because it is a little bit long to say all the time. Um, so yeah, the OCN gets developed, and the reason it's called the negative is because the color is inverted. So when that gets made into prints, the positives as we call them, the color gets inverted back to like how it should look, and prints are what is distributed to theaters or given to TV networks to broadcast and all that stuff. So yeah, that's what original film is, and there's a lot that goes into it and a lot of complications that arise. Like there's dupe negatives, inter negatives, inter positives, and it's just a lot to get into.
No, I find it to be all fascinating stuff, because learning how just all of this was made, it's like, wow. So I love the idea of being able to peel back the layers of quality. I remember watching a documentary on the restoration for The Wizard of Oz, and apparently they restored it so well that they found details that they never knew were there. And we're talking about people who saw the film thousands of times for the sake of restoration, and they're finding new details in there. It's amazing. I think like the Tin Man or something had like rivets in his head, and just because like it was so low quality back then, like projectors or something were so low quality, they just couldn't see it. But we have this technology that can make this old stuff look so much better. It's fascinating.
Yeah, a similar thing happened with Project Echo when they were looking at the new transfer and they saw a bunch of jokes that the animators had written on like the computer screens and stuff that no one else had ever seen before. So a lot of that stuff is really cool. Yeah.
We're now, correct me if I'm wrong. I saw a post where you guys posted that classic I think it's Toei or Toho, the one with the classic image with the C and the logo of the company and everything. Were you guys the ones who realized that there's a ship in the background?
Actually, no. Japanese people before had actually seen that previously, but I think in the West, in the English-speaking world, we were kind of the first to kind of discover that. But yeah, Japanese people, fans have had already known about it before us.
Okay. Hey, we'll take a win when we can get it. We're the first. You guys are the first on our side of the planet to figure it out. Because I just remember seeing that post and I was just like, wait a second, what? And like, you see this very, very zoomed in image. Oh, that was great. Where did the name Femboy Films come from? Your old name, and what got you guys to decide to change it? Where did Kineko Video come from?
Um, just memeing, really, is what it is. We originally thought of names, and it was just like it slightly poked at people because it's, some people get upset over the name, or some people are just like, why would, this is too silly, or they don't care at all, or they think it's great. It kind of hit this right balance of it hit this right balance of getting everybody's attention.
Hmm.
And I think Nemu's better suited to explain the origins of the new name. But I think at this point, um, we've shown that we are serious about the things that we do want to present to everybody. So I think the joke name kind of served its purpose, and now we've decided to rebrand, so to speak.
Oh yeah, once outlets like IGN and Polygon and all those people, they said the word femboy, I was like, you know what? I think we've done our job and now it's time to move on.
Yeah, it might be a pretty good time now because now all the big names
Go
are
out on
looking at
top.
you guys. I would tell people about you guys because like the restoration work you guys have done is amazing, and everybody would ask like, "Oh, what's the name of the studio that restored this?" And I was like, "Femboy Films."
Yeah, that's the funny thing. Like everyone would be taken aback by it, but at the same time, it was always a just supposed to be a joke, and we never really thought that we would get to where we are now. So we decided, it's time to show a more serious side of what we're doing, and it's for people to take us more seriously.
Mhm.
It's definitely in better taste, you know,
Sure.
because a lot of people would never know whether you're joking or not. So it's definitely a good direction to go in.
Yeah, just eliminate the whole controversy surrounding it. It's served its purpose to get the attention that we've gotten. So
Yeah, harmless joke. It was funny at the time, but now you guys are really pumping out some great work. So you want to look more professional.
Yeah, and also, we do want people to enjoy the things that we are putting out, and I'm sure, just like you're saying, you share that stuff with someone. Like if you shared Mario with someone, you kind of have to explain the name away to some people. So this is easier, and it gives everybody a better chance to be able to spread all the stuff we're doing to everybody else.
Yeah. Speaking of the Mario video, where did that all start? How long did the process take?
well, the origins of it come up with a user on a bunch of forums, and I'd consider him a friend now. Carnival. He had been working on restorations of this movie for well over a decade with the VHS and what anything he could find to just make it look as good as it could. And then one magical day in like 2016 or something, he found a listing online for two reels for 16 millimeter of the movie, and I mean, a no brainer. He bought it, and he got it
For how
scanned.
much?
Short.
For
I
for, for how much?
Okay, so just a disclaimer here. This isn't a lot of money for film.
It sounds
This
great.
is
It sounds like you're justifying buying something to your parents.
it's not a lot of money compared to some of the stuff we bought in. It was like a little over $1,000 or something like that USD.
My heart. My
So
wallet.
yeah, just to make sure that we're on the same page, that is not a lot. That's actually a steal, I would consider.
So, what's the stuff usually going for then?
Well, it depends on what it is. Like you have a lot of like on eBay, you'll see a 35 millimeter print of like a big Hollywood movie, and those can go for thousands of dollars. Like if like I wouldn't say they would go to the 10,000s, but we've seen stuff go from like 3,000 to 5,000 depending on what it is, and it's just one movie.
Yeah,
Um,
the thing
I've
about
seen the original
those
Star
prints.
Wars go for a lot, and
The,
another
the,
restoration group that like I follow is they got it so quickly, but it broke their bank accounts.
yeah, the thing about those prints, 35 millimeters specifically, um, was really meant for theaters, and 99% of the time they're told to destroy them after the fact, which will break the heart of anybody who cares about the stuff. But the ones that you see out there on eBay are technically probably not supposed to be. And I would assume the same's true for anime as well. But you're also talking about a niche market, and when you have something like Mario, I mean that's a big recognizable name, so of course it costs more.
Mm-hmm.
Mario 16, but concept still
right.
remains that probably wasn't supposed to be out in the public eye.
Yeah, so anime like this, what's it usually filmed on? Is it
Um,
usually 16? Are we talking like 8 would be too small, right?
So, for television stuff, it's almost always 16 millimeter. But in the 70s, they would shoot TV shows on 35 until like 1975 when they decided to go 16 because it was cheaper. So yeah, if you look at a lot of shows from the early 70s, you can see that they were shot on 35 millimeter. Um, but pretty much everything from the mid 70s to the 90s was shot on 16, and then they sort of started going back to 35 again, but everything was edited on video at that point anyway, so it wouldn't really matter unless you're doing a fresh restoration nowadays.
So what you're
So
saying is we'll never get a beautiful 70 millimeter print of Dragon Ball Z.
no, not possible.
Man,
Unless you blow that mother up, I guess. It wouldn't look any better than 16 does.
yeah, I wouldn't really like bring out any details.
If we're talking for movies, though, those were always shot on 35, almost always.
Okay.
So this Mario movie would have actually been shot on 35 millimeter, and the print that we got was I think it's called a reduction print,
Mhm.
um, and it was just taking the 35 millimeter master and putting it on 16.
Do you know like if it's a duplicate of a duplicate of a duplicate or anything like that, or is the
No, it is not.
background a mystery?
We've seen duplicates of duplicates of duplicates, and they look awful. But this print in particular for 16 millimeter looks very, very good. So it's got to
The
come.
restoration you guys did is incredible. So I would believe that.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I think our restoration speaks for how good the print itself was, but the print itself is like unwatchable once you watch the restoration.
That's fascinating. Again, it goes back to like that whole peeling back the the terrible low quality layers, and you can find something really beautiful in there. So, in your opinion, what would you guys say is an example of a good restoration? A good, like, let's say, a good restoration made for something like Blu-ray, or like even maybe a theatrical release. Are we putting in like sharpening or anything like that?
I think it totally depends on what you're going for. Maybe Quazza can elaborate more on that, but
Yeah,
there's different goals.
it's not so cut and dry. Um, I think number one, whatever you can do to make it look as it's intended to look is probably the ideal, and that's a very hard thing to figure out a lot of the time. With animation, I think it's a little easier because while there's things to account for in photography and all the color science behind how things transfer to film, a lot of these companies have their own color charts. They have a way that they intended it to look, and even if you don't have all the facts behind exactly how everything went down when they produced something, you can kind of put the pieces of the puzzle together to at least get pretty close. Whether something's too sharp or too blurry or too saturated or not, you can kind of figure that out when you know what the ground truth is about color or the ground truth is about the photography or any of that. It's a bit tougher for us because we don't have access to all the official materials to something. And so what we try to do is just make it look as nice as possible. So there's a bit of subjectivity in there, but we do try to adhere to reference material as much as we can as well. Mario in particular had a pretty expansive art book, which was useful and not so useful because the color palettes and everything in that book were different than what was in the final movie. There were scenes and illustrations that didn't make it into the final movie, and so we had to make our best guess as to what was right and wrong. You don't have to be a principal color scientist to figure out that Mario is supposed to look red. So I think there's a little bit of wiggle room there to go ahead and do what you think is right.
Okay. So there's a little bit of like objectivity, a little bit of subjectivity, depending on who you're working with and everything.
Definitely.
Right,
And a
right.
lot of these things, if you're working in an official space, just go down to what the director wants, even if it's not technically right, I would say.
It's fascinating. I saw a beautiful 70 millimeter print of 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh, I saw that too. Did
Yeah.
you go to the same screening as me at the Arrow?
No.
Okay, never mind. But I saw also 70 millimeter Space Odyssey. It was fantastic.
It was incredible. And so I looked it up, like how the restoration worked and everything. And I saw so many people online arguing about it because, the director has passed away a long time ago. So everybody was really arguing whether it looked accurate to the director's intention. Some people loved it. I loved it. Some people were just like, it's a little inaccurate to how it's supposed to look.
Yeah, there's a place for that. Go look at the Dragon Ball community. They all do the same thing. We're all guilty of it to some degree. I do get a little disappointed when we chase perfection and what's the phrase? Let the perfect get in the way of the good. Something along those lines. I think it's really easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah, at some point you have to figure out when you have to compromise, and for Mario, we had to make some compromises. Especially working with a print that noisy and that grainy, you have to really take things into consideration, and just don't try to fly too close to the sun. Speaking of which, though, you asked about like some other aspects of what makes a good restoration. I feel like there's a misconception in the film and film community where any mention of noise reduction is completely taboo. And, so a lot of studios won't tell you this, but I will. They always use noise reduction to some degree. There's never a Blu-ray or anything that goes out completely noise reductionless, unless we're talking about something like Robotech,
Yeah, that makes
where
because if you grain, it's gonna get distracting. I completely understand grain. I get it, but when there's too much, it's distracting.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I mean when I say about Robotech.
Shooting usually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that Blu-ray had no noise reduction, and it looked extremely distracting. I feel. So yeah, you especially when you're compressing things down to Blu-ray level, you have to consider that because otherwise it'll look like a blocky mess. And for Mario, we did have to do some noise reduction because that print was so noisy and so grainy. If we didn't, we would not have been able to color correct it properly.
Yeah. Every time we went to go make any type of drastic change, the separation between the grain itself would just increase. And so you'd get these really bright splotches and these really properly colored splotches, and you really could handle that. So, I mean, when you use those types of tools, it is important, and I think correct to make sure that you're not destroying the integrity of what the film's supposed to look like. You know, I would say for animation, film grain really isn't part of the animation. You know, they're not painting that into the cell, but it is a byproduct of the film, and therefore you got to honor that. So scrubbing it away and just going super hard DNR, I don't think that's right. But you know, it's just a matter of fact that sometimes you need to use those types of tools to get a look that you're going for.
The key is to do it, but not so much that it, you know, just like Quazza just said, destroys the integrity of the medium. So a lot of remasters of animation, especially anime, will ignore that and just ruin everything, pretty much ruin the image, make it look super smeary and stuff. But we feel like, you know, at least for movies put out by Hollywood studios, they usually take into the account that film should be a respected medium, and their denoising is a lot more respectful. And we try to mimic that respect for film. If we have to denoise something, we'll always make sure that it's not aggressive enough to, you know, to negatively affect the image quality.
I mean, look, you know, nowadays we even have digitally shot films that are put onto camera negatives. Like, I know the two best examples were Batman and Dune. They were both filmed digitally, but then they just put it on a film print afterwards, and it has just a very fine layer of grain. And I hear a lot of argument about that too. For me, I don't mind personally.
Actually, I think Ghibli stores a lot of their movies on film.
I feel like a lot of studios, for long-term preservation anyway, they still store their movies on film
Yeah.
stocks.
Yeah, believe it or not, digital storage is a little finicky. So when they do need long-term storage, I think they try to move away from that. And I don't remember where I had read this, but I'm pretty sure that they've stored a number of their movies, maybe all of them, at this point on film in like separate color separation reels, and then I guess they recomposite it when they want to get a new digital copy.
That's fascinating. When did Ghibli start animating digitally?
I think the first one was Spirited Away.
That's right, because that has some CGI in it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
think
yeah,
it does.
but a lot of cell animated movies also have CGI, like Ghost in the Shell.
Good point.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to like you're animating on cells, but you still manipulate some stuff with the computer, and unfortunately, that sort of caps out what kind of detail you can get. If it's composited digitally, it's stuck at what they rendered it at. So, if you want to make a remaster of something that was finished digitally, you have to go back to those original files and render it again in a higher resolution, or you have to take the camera negatives, scan them all over again, and then make all those effects from scratch again in a higher resolution. And I think that's what Ghost in the Shell did for that 4K Blu-ray.
Would you say that's a pretty good example of a good restoration?
I would say it's scrubbed a little too much, but the HDR is really good.
What I guess in your opinion, what is the best example of an official release that was restored really well? You could go with animation, live action, whatever you want.
I think the Blu-rays of the Detective Conan movies are really well done. They're a little scrubbed too, but I think, especially with 35 millimeter film, you can get away with a lot more without actually killing the detail that's underneath of them. And this is probably be a little bit of a hot take, but I actually think the Evangelion Blu-rays were okay. There seems to be endless problems with the materials that they have for that show, and I think that's probably it's probably the best we're going to get. But also, I think it's a commendable effort because having seen film myself, like I can't imagine all the effort they probably had to go through to do it.
Something remarkable, I think, was the Criterion restoration of the Apu trilogy. I don't know if you know anything about what lengths they had to go through to fix that. But basically, the film was just, you know, damaged to a point where it was unrecognizable. They have a trailer up if you want to check it out, where like you see how badly damaged and how badly warped in this film was, and they bring it back to this pristine look, and that just like blows my mind every time I see that.
That's amazing.
A lot of what
I know
Criterion
with-
does is actually very impressive.
I know with Lawrence of Arabia, they didn't have the original negative, but they at least had like some prints, which I think were duplicates, but at least they had something to work with, and
Yeah,
that came out pretty well.
yeah. Citizen Kane also, the original negatives for that have been long gone for decades. So
fascinating.
they have the thing about them is they have the resources and the access to get a bunch of materials, whereas we don't really have that luxury.
So, might as well ask the hot topic question. Favorite anime?
Eh, I guess it depends for me.
Okay. You want
If
to list a couple? I got
Well, I always say Dragon Ball, but I probably will never ever watch it again. Actually, um, other one is Madoka Magica.
mm,
I have to get up and look at my shelf. um, I think the cop out answer is Dragon Ball, but not because I want to watch it all the time, because it's just it has so much meaning. It has it you know I've watched it zillions of times already, and it's been so influential in the things that I've wanted to do and the things that I've come to find. It got me into anime, it got me into film. Um, I would say, barring that, I really like Hellsing,
mm.
and I really like Himaguri Orange Road.
Oh, okay. Good choices, guys. I actually have to admit, I'm currently watching Dragon Ball Z all over again. I've watched Kai, I've read the manga, I've done it all, except for the original series, like those 200 and something episodes. I managed to get my hands on the merged Dragon Box release that fans made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and I gotta admit, it's just really fun to watch.
I
480,
hear I hear
but
soon they're putting out the show color corrected, so look out for that.
oh boy, that's another 6 days of downloading.
Honestly,
be
it'll
great.
probably be the best version that you can get at this point.
I think so too. Yeah. Do you think we have any? Do you think there's? Do you think they kept all of the film prints for Dragon Ball?
Yeah, definitely.
It would be
That's a
silly if they
lot
didn't.
of. I can only imagine how much space that's going to take up.
Yeah, those 16 millimeter prints are pretty big actually. Not as big as 35 ones, but they do take up a lot of storage space. That's true. But the thing with like studios like Toei and stuff, they have whole ass archives where they just have storage stuff. And that's why these things can get lost a lot of the times, because they're full of crap and they don't know what that stuff is, or they don't know where it is, and so it can just get messy if it's not organized well. And a lot of those people who organize their archives, and this goes for other places too, they've either stopped working at the studio or have passed on, and so these new people are kind of like shuffling to figure everything out, and it can get confusing.
Do you guys honestly see us getting a good release for this series?
Probably not anytime soon.
Yeah, I would say if it's going to happen, it's not going to be for a while. With all the space that takes up, there's so much material that if they've been working on anything in the background, they've been doing it for a really long time. They brought out those two, the Trunks and the Bardock special, and those were, I guess, rescanned and remastered. But I mean, this all takes a lot of time and a lot of effort from a lot of people, and no doubt a lot of money. So yeah, if it's going to happen, it's not going to be anytime soon. But you can always hold on to a little bit of hope. So I'd love to see it.
Of course. I think that's a pretty realistic answer, though. There's just so much content out there that I don't think we're going to have the. I don't think Toei is going to not waste their money on it, but I don't think they'll see it as worth it.
At
Yeah,
this
surely,
point, yeah.
yeah, surely they need to see the financial investment pay off for them. So
Yeah,
hard to
one can
speculate.
dream, though. Am I right?
Yeah, for real.
So, what would you guys like to restore in the future? Who would you guys like to work with, studio wise? And I guess what's the dream project?
That's a great question. What would you like to restore in the future, Quazza?
I mean, everything comes back to Dragon Ball, but that's
Honestly,
not a
yeah.
real answer.
It's not a realistic one anyway.
Yeah, I'd like to restore something more from the '70s. I think, whether that be a series or a movie. That era is kind of underrepresented. I think there's a lot of big hits from the '80s and '90s, and I think I think that's where I would want to. That's what I would want to work on. As far as studios, whoever, that's fine. As long as I can do something where I
We're
know that
making a
I'm.
difference,
Yeah, that's kind of where it is for me. I want to be able to put out something that everyone can appreciate.
I feel like it is every film nerd's dream to work at Criterion, and I think that would be really cool.
Yeah, that would be.
That'd be awesome.
For the longest time, they were the gold standard. I mean, their 4K release is debatable, but I think for most people, yeah, that's just like they know what they're doing.
Yeah, or even Arrow or Eureka or those guys too. They're doing some great stuff as well.
Hmm.
For anime, I mean, anybody, like, give us your film. We can make it look great.
Yeah, we
I
can.
love the enthusiasm you guys bring to the table. It's really, in my opinion, something that the industry needs. Like just people who want to do it and will do it.
Yeah, and I feel like that's lost over a corporate kind of environment where everything is financial.
It's unfortunate. Yeah, I know film budgets nowadays are getting smaller and smaller just because of. I don't mean to blame streaming, but it is a factor into it.
That and more indie productions are getting made now.
Oh yeah, I think indie is really thriving because equipment nowadays is just so much cheaper.
Absolutely, yeah. With you can shoot a movie on your iPhone and it'll still look good.
Yeah. So I guess to wrap it up, what is the future looking like for Coneco Video? Any plans that we got going on? Any little secrets you want to spill for us?
I'm not going to say names, but we have some other stuff that where we're waiting to put out. So
Yeah, we're some stuff's in the works. As for the future, who knows? I really don't know. Can't predict what's going to happen at this point.
I mean, the
But
future is we're going to keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah,
That's for sure. But what shape that takes, that's tough to say.
Would you say that you guys are more invested than you ever were?
Yeah, definitely.
definitely.
That's great to hear. I love something that starts off as a hobby, but it's a fun story to hear, something that starts off as a hobby and you just manage to turn it into something really professional, and it's awesome.
Yeah, thanks. We're genuinely happy, and one of the things that um, keeps us going too is we started doing this for ourselves, and the small group that's behind what we're doing, and now that we've put stuff out and things have been so receptive, and there's people going, "Oh my gosh, I saw this a long time ago. I never thought I'd see it again." And it's just that feels really good, honestly.
Yeah,
It's a little bit selfish, but just it feels good to know that someone's seen something that I've worked on and they're happy with. And I guess that's what anyone who works on something would say. But uh, it does feel like when we're able to do that we are impacting people in a positive way.
definitely.
And that's kind of half of it now. It's just we know that there's people out there who want to see what we're doing, and being able to make that possible is just genuinely really cool.
Yep, totally agree with that.
Well, I think it can only go up here from this point. You know, success. I can definitely see it happening with you guys with the enthusiasm you bring. Yeah, it's
Thanks,
gonna
man.
be great.
Just saying, Criterion, my inbox is open.
You heard it here first, folks. All right, Nemu, Quazza, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us at the Collection Compass. It means a lot to us. Where can we find you guys?
So we have a bunch of social media outlets. Our main one we use is our Twitter, but we also made a Mastodon in case you're not in the Elon train. So you can see our all our updates at twitter.com/Kineko video. And the Mastodon thing is way more complicated, but it's linked, so you can find us there too. We also have a Patreon and a Ko-fi where you can donate. There's some cool perks you can get on Patreon if you subscribe, including a free scan every month if you're at the top tier level. Um, you can also find us on our public Discord. We have, and it's more active than it's ever been actually, which is cool to see. A lot of like-minded people interested in film, animation, restoration as well. And we also have an archive.org page where we post some stuff sometimes, but we're in the process of migrating to a new account. So I think that's everything.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Do come talk to us.
Oh,
We'd like
and
to
our
hear.
YouTube as well, where we actually post stuff, our works.
Well, it's been great talking to you guys. And in case anybody doesn't know, you can find the Collection Compass at the Collection Compass on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. We got it all. You can find it in the description. Once again, thank you so much, and have a great day, guys.
Thanks
Yeah,
so much
you
for
too.
having us.
Thank you.